There was a time when neighborhoods actually felt peaceful. You'd wave to your neighbors while sipping morning coffee. Kids rode their bikes until the sun dipped below the rooftops. Sunday potlucks were legendary, the kind everyone looked forward to all week. But times changed. We embraced convenience. Smart locks, smart thermostats, video doorbells, medical alert systems. Everything in our daily rhythm became tied to a signal floating through the air. We traded simple for seamless. And that's how we ended up here, where one ignorant decision almost unraveled everything we'd built. The entire neighborhood went dark. No Wi-Fi, no cable, no home security, nothing. Chaos erupted as dozens of residents spilled out of their homes into the fading light of Willowbrook Estates. Kids clutched lifeless tablets. Remote workers waved their phones around like antennas, desperate for even a single bar of signal. Elderly neighbors stumbled into the street, terrified because their medical alert pendants had stopped working. And at the center of the mess stood our HOA president, Karen Mitchell. Her arms were crossed proudly as she looked down at the pile of splintered wood and twisted metal that used to be my tool shed. She turned toward the gathering crowd, wearing the smug, self-satisfied expression she always used when wielding her petty authority. Her voice carried across the cul-de-sac, dripping with condescension, as she announced that she had finally removed what she called an unauthorized eyesore from our pristine community. What she didn't realize was that she had just destroyed the single structure keeping our entire neighborhood online. My name is Tom Chen, and around here I'm known as the unofficial tech guy for Willowbrook Estates. I work in IT for a major corporation downtown, but I've always believed in helping my community. 6 months ago, when a severe storm took out the main utility lines feeding internet service to our neighborhood, I volunteered to host a temporary solution. The telecom company needed a secure, climate-controlled space to house their emergency equipment while they worked on permanent repairs. Repairs that kept getting delayed by permit problems and supply shortages. My reinforced backyard tool shed was perfect. It had proper ventilation, a dedicated electrical circuit, and even a small air conditioning unit I'd installed for my woodworking projects. The previous HOA board, a group of reasonable adults who understood modern infrastructure needs, approved the arrangement. We had emails, official meeting minutes, and even a handshake deal with the former board president, Jim Morrison, before he moved to Florida. Everyone knew the setup was temporary, but absolutely essential. Then Karen Mitchell arrived. She moved 8 months ago and immediately set her sights on HOA leadership. Armed with a real estate license she hardly used and an ego that could barely fit through a doorway, she campaigned on strict rule enforcement and community beautification. She won by 3 votes after promising lower dues and magically higher property values through what she called decisive action. Her reign of terror began instantly. Mailbox heights were inspected down to the millimeter. Grass citations were issued if a single blade exceeded 2.5 inches. She attempted to ban kids' bicycles from driveways and demanded that all garbage cans be hidden inside garages within 30 minutes of pickup. But for reasons only she understood, she developed a particular obsession with my tool shed. It started with passive-aggressive notes tucked under my windshield wiper. The structure does not match approved architectural guidelines. The color is half a shade off the approved palette. The roofline does not complement the main residence. I explained the situation at 3 separate board meetings, complete with documentation from the previous board. Each time, Karen would purse her lips, look annoyed, and table the discussion for further review. Then the warnings escalated. Official violation letters arrived by certified mail. Fines started piling up. $50 for non-compliance. $100 for continued violation. I kept paying while trying to work with the board, hoping the permanent utility repairs would finish soon. I even offered to repaint the shed, add decorative shutters, anything to satisfy her aesthetic crusade without jeopardizing the equipment inside. But Karen didn't want to compromise. She wanted control. When I missed a single HOA meeting due to a work emergency, she pounced. Citing her president's authority over emergency maintenance, she authorized HOA funds to address what she labeled an immediate safety hazard. She hired Dave's demolition run by her cousin, of course, and scheduled the teardown for a Tuesday morning when she knew I'd be at work. I will never forget the phone call from my neighbor, elderly Mrs. Rodriguez. Her voice trembled. "Tom, they're tearing down your shed. There's a bulldozer in your backyard." I told her she must be mistaken, but she insisted. In the background, I could hear the deep rumble of machinery. I sped home, probably breaking every traffic law in the county, but by the time I arrived, it was too late. My reinforced shed, built to withstand hurricane-force winds, had been reduced to a pile of debris. The demolition crew was already loading the remains into their truck, and among the ruins, I could see the mangled remains of hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of networking equipment, routers, switches, fiber optic hubs, battery backups, all crushed beyond salvage. The central distribution node for our neighborhood's internet, cable, and connected home services had been obliterated. The disaster began unfolding within minutes. Mrs. Rodriguez's medical pendant beeped frantically before going silent. The Johnson family's smart home security system shrieked as it lost connection. Garage doors stopped responding. Smart thermostats dropped into fail-safe mode. Ring doorbells went dead. Baby monitors lost their feeds. Our entire technologically dependent suburban ecosystem collapsed like a row of dominoes. Then the residents came pouring out. First a trickle, then a flood. Jennifer Park, who worked from home as a financial analyst, came running out in a blazer and pajama bottoms, clutching her laptop and asking if anyone else had lost service. The Hendersons discovered their vacation rental smart locks had gone offline, trapping guests inside. Mike Donnelly, who ran a small accounting firm from his home, watched helplessly as his cloud backup crashed in the middle of tax season. Within an hour, the pristine, manicured streets of Willowbrook Estates looked like a digital refugee camp. Neighbors clustered in groups on front lawns, holding their phones toward the sky, desperate for overloaded cellular signals. Kids cried about missing their online classes. The high schoolers panicked about the assignments due that night. Even the Tesla owners in the neighborhood suddenly realized their cars couldn't download critical updates. And then, right on cue, Karen emerged from her house as if she had rehearsed the moment. She marched toward the restless crowd, carrying a thick stack of HOA bylaws, highlighted and tabbed with color-coded sticky notes. Her voice rang out with manufactured authority as she lectured everyone about property standards and the sacred importance of aesthetic uniformity. She honestly seemed baffled by the anger building around her, as though she couldn't understand why losing the entire neighborhood's internet access was a big deal. That was when I decided to drop the first bomb. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, loud enough for the whole crowd to hear, "Miss Mitchell has just destroyed the neighborhood's temporary internet hub." That shed contained the emergency equipment installed by Velocity Communications after the storm damage. Every single home in Willowbrook Estates routes through that equipment. She didn't just tear down my shed, she cut off our entire community from the digital world. The crowd shifted instantly from confusion to white-hot fury. Parents realized their kids couldn't join virtual tutoring sessions. Remote workers began calculating how much income they were about to lose. Home automation diehards suddenly found their expensive smart systems worthless. The neighborhood watch captain pointed out that our security camera network, the same one that helped catch 3 package thieves last month, was completely offline. Karen's smirk cracked. Just for a moment. But she quickly regained her composure and doubled down with bureaucratic arrogance. She claimed proper permits had never been filed for commercial-grade equipment in a residential zone. She insisted the previous board's approval was invalid. She even suggested the whole setup was probably illegal, and that she'd done everyone a favor by removing it. That's when I played my second card. I held up my phone and showed the crowd my email exchanges with the old board, the signed agreement with Velocity Communications, and most importantly, the city-issued permit explicitly authorizing temporary utility equipment after the storm. Then I reminded everyone that our HOA's own upgraded security system, the one Karen had bragged about installing last month, also ran through that same hub. I saw the realization hit her like a punch to the stomach. But the fallout was still just beginning. Emergency vehicles started arriving, responding to calls from residents whose medical devices had failed. The fire department addressed false alarms triggered by smart smoke detectors gone haywire. A police officer interviewed residents who had lost critical security footage. While sirens echoed across the neighborhood, I organized a group of neighbors to document everything. Photos of the destroyed equipment, screenshots, written statements, evidence piled up fast. That evening, an emergency HOA meeting was called. The room was overflowing. Karen sat stiffly at the board table, trying and failing to look in control. Residents stood up one after another, sharing stories, missed medical appointments, lost wages, kids locked out of classes, security breaches. When my turn came, I presented the agreement, the city permit, the invoices over $300,000 in destroyed equipment, and then I dropped the biggest bombshell of the night. According to federal law, intentionally damaging communications infrastructure is a felony. I had already filed reports with the FCC, the State Utilities Commission, and the federal prosecutor's office. The entire room fell silent. Karen's sputtering protests were cut off when board member Janet Lee announced that there was no authorization in the HOA's records for the demolition. Karen had acted completely alone. Treasurer Robert Walsh confirmed an unapproved $15,000 payment to Dave's demolition. Secretary Marcus Bennett reminded the room that proper procedures had been bypassed entirely. A petition calling for Karen's removal spread through the room like wildfire. Within minutes, it had over 200 signatures. Then Sarah Kim from Velocity Communications arrived. She confirmed the destruction of $347,000 in equipment, plus $100,000 in restoration costs. And because the damage was intentional, insurance wouldn't cover any of it. Velocity would pursue legal action against the HOA and Karen personally. The board voted. Karen was removed unanimously, but Karen wasn't done making a scene. She screamed, ranted, and threatened to sue us all. Her meltdown ended abruptly when two sheriff's deputies stepped forward to take official statements regarding criminal destruction of infrastructure. What followed were weeks of consequences. I filed my lawsuit. Velocity filed theirs. The FCC, state authorities, and federal prosecutors launched investigations. Karen's cousin Dave turned over recordings of her ordering him to tear everything down, internet junk and all. In court, she was found liable for over $500,000 in damages. The HOA was fined as well, but the criminal trial sealed her fate. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 2 years in federal prison, plus probation and fines. The bailiff cuffed her. She shouted about conspiracies, about her rights, about how she'd end up owning all our houses. But the only thing she walked away with was a prison sentence. And Willowbrook. We finally got back online. A new HOA board elected by a landslide restored sanity to the neighborhood. And my new toolshed stands reinforced once again. Fiber cables humming quietly inside, just like before. The difference now? People think twice before calling something an eyesore. Thanks for sticking through this wild journey of HOA madness and digital disaster. Subscribe for more true stories of neighborhood drama, tech chaos, and justice served. And if you've got your own HOA horror tale, drop it in the comments. You might just be next.